papers, journalists, they will make up these names for these people and they stick. It sticks. The only exception to that I'm aware of is BTK, who named himself because he wanted to have that really cool, infamous name, BTK. And so he that's what he signed his letters as, BTK, and that stuck. Crazy. It's like this really weird enigma that they have. They've got these huge egos for some reason. If they're not going to be known for anything good, I guess it's better to be known for something really bad and to be one of the top. BTK wanted that. He wanted to be one of the top 5, at least, maybe top 3 serial killers to ever have been, not necessarily found, but he just wanted to be known as one of the worst. In November of 2008, Jesperson's daughter Melissa Moore appeared on Dr. Phil to talk about her father. She was also on the Oprah Winfrey Show, the Lifetime Movies Network series Monster in My Family, and a 2020 special on ABC, and she was also a correspondent for Crime Watch Daily. We're actually seeing the daughter of BTK come out more so now, trying to help solve all these murders that they think may be connected to BTK, and she's doing that, allowing them to use her DNA to do that familial DNA matching. I think that's very brave of her to do that. I don't know that I would want people to know that my father was an infamous serial killer. But then again, I might. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I would view that. I don't know if I'd want people to know or not want people to know. I can't really answer that. I think I wouldn't want people to know. But if it were something I know I could do to help others find closure, like help identify victims, then perhaps I would. Then perhaps I would do that. In 2008, Melissa Moore, his daughter, published a book titled Shattered Silence, The Untold Story of a Serial Killer's Daughter. Moore recounts living with Jesperson until her parents' 1990 divorce and noticing how her father was different when she was in elementary school. Their house bordered on an apple orchard, and Jesperson killed stray cats and gophers that wandered nearby. One day she watched horrified as he hung stray kittens from the family's clothesline. She ran to get her mother, and when they returned, the kittens lay on the ground dead. He had watched and laughed as the kittens clawed each other to escape and then killed them. In November of 2014, she wrote an article about her father for the BBC. In March of 2018, she was featured on an episode titled Put on a Happy Face of the Investigation Discovery true crime series Evil Lives Here. In September of 2018, podcast network How Stuff Works began releasing a show called Happy Face, featuring interviews with Melissa about her childhood and her father. And there were 12 episodes of that. In 2021, a trailer appeared on iTunes for a new true crime podcast called Life After Happy Face to be hosted by Melissa Moore and forensic criminologist Laura Petler, and the episode was released on July 9 of 2021. So there's a lot of very recent things that have occurred, and that's why he's back. You can find pictures of him back when he was in the 90s when he was arrested, and you can also find the most recent ones of him in prison. And he has obviously aged like they all do. I always like to see them, though, and see, how they look now. Wonder if they've really had any rehab of any kind. Do they regret what they've done? I'm always curious about that. Is there a possibility that they've been rehabbed at some level? Do I think that even if they have, they should be released? Absolutely not. They should never, ever be out in society again. Now, can we use them to learn about things? Of course we can. And that's what we should do. That's what we should do. All right, so the most recent story talks about, gives a brief summary of why he's in prison. That he was convicted of murdering, or he confessed to murdering 8 women between 90 and 95, and he was known as Happy Face Killer because he wrote notes to the media that he signed with a smiley face. But then in February of 96, he told an investigator from the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office that he killed one of the women in 94 and dumped her body along Interstate 10 in Oregon. Jesperson did not identify the woman, but he said he believed her name was Susan or Suzette. The prison crew, we talked about this earlier, prison crew found the body on September 14th of 94, and at that time, the only thing investigators could determine was that the body was that of a white female, likely being the ages of 30 to 55. Since then, on October 3rd, the woman's been identified. Despite what the Okaloosa County Sheriff's... Oh, I'm sorry. Since then, this says that the woman has been unidentified, despite what the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office described as decades-long efforts by investigators and those from Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the District 1 Medical Examiner's Office, their efforts to actually identify that person. Those efforts included a facial reconstruction in 2007 and then additional anthropological examination in 2008 and isotope analysis from the remains at the University of Florida in 2018. In 2022, the medical examiner's office began working with Authorum, a private company that uses genetic genealogy to aid in identification, using what Neaton described as forensic-grade genome sequencing, and Chrissy Neaton is the chief investigator with that office. Authorum was able to create a comprehensive genealogical profile of the unidentified woman in 23, which led to the identification of the woman as Suzanne Kellenberg. Kellenberg was 34 at the time of death, and she's survived by her family in Wisconsin. Jesperson has been charged with her murder, and he met with investigators and officials in September of 23 to provide further details about her murder. Aiden said that Jesperson repeated the claim that he met Kellenberg in 94 when she was working as a long-haul trucker. He told officials that they traveled to a rest area in the Florida Panhandle, and while there, he parked next to a security guard while Kellenberg slept in his bed. He said that she began screaming and wouldn't stop. And Jesperson was not allowed to have unauthorized riders in his truck and did not want to draw attention, so he stopped Kellenberg from breathing by pushing his fist against her neck, and then he later placed zip ties around her throat. It's a horrible way to die as well. Thanks to the tireless efforts of for so long, the remains of Suzanne Kellenberg, the final unidentified victim of Jesperson's cross-country murder sprees, can finally leave the medical examiner's office and return home. Another victim of Jesperson's was identified in 22, Patricia Skipple of Colton, Oregon. And she had been known as Blue Pacheco because of the clothing found on her body, but genetic genealogy was also used to identify her nearly 30 years after her remains were found along California's State Route 152. And then he confessed to the murder, saying in a letter to the District County's Attorney's Office that he sexually assaulted and killed a woman in the area. So you can clearly see how we have this technology coming about that is giving families some closure, even 30 years later, right? Some closure of some sort. I don't think, again, that we should put families through a trial. I don't think that we should waste money on that. And maybe you don't agree that it's wasting money, but I mean, he's not getting out of jail. For sure. So, maybe, especially if these, criminals confess, then perhaps you can put them in prison and keep them in prison, but you can certainly add on to their sentence, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. So I think that's probably why I have this opinion, I want them to be caught. I want them to be put in prison. I want to learn what we can from them. Um, and if we continue to find bodies, if we continue to have those things happen, wonderful. I think that every victim deserves to be, identified and put to rest, and families deserve to know the truth. But I, I don't know at what cost we should do that. But I may feel differently if I ever had someone in my family who was a victim. I might feel differently. Certainly, I'm just going on empathy here, right? I'm empathic toward those people. However, I'm also wanting to use logic and, pin as many as you can on them that you can prove positively. Don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on more trials when you could use that money in many better ways. That's my argument. All right, so that's our conversation for today. I hope that you learned something new today. I know that I always do when I read these stories. I also find many commonalities that I'll always talk about. So if you've listened to, I think this will be my 43rd episode, you will see clearly common characteristics between all of these serial killers, whether they're male or female. And that's important for us to note. Of course, we're looking at those characteristics and we're wanting to take that information and apply it to our youngest students to see what we can do as educators, as well as society, mental health, juvenile justice system, to help these children and make a difference in their lives, and lives of others, of course, because you're potentially saving lives, potentially saving lots of lives. So, again, that's our mission. That's why it's important. So any thoughts that you may have, any questions, comments, you can always email me at drkimberlycassidy89@gmail.com. You can go to my Facebook page, which is Composition of a Killer whatever the Facebook thing is. Or there's a website, compositionofakiller.com. And I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on some of these things. So please feel free to do that. As always, be safe out there. Remember my thoughts about being a hitchhiker or picking up hitchhikers. It's hard to even say. Don't do it. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to our next time together. Have a great day.